This is not a coincidence, and this is not just another message drifting through your day. Right now, on January 26th, something sacred is unfolding in the unseen realm, and it has found its way directly to you. Jesus is calling your name, not in a crowd, not from a distance, but personally, deliberately, and with intention. This is not a general invitation meant for anyone who happens to listen. This is a summons meant for you, and the timing of it carries weight that cannot be overstated. Moments like this do not announce themselves loudly in the natural world. They arrive quietly, often unexpectedly, carrying a sense of urgency that you feel before you fully understand it. If you feel a tightening in your spirit, a stirring in your chest, or an unexplainable awareness that something important is happening right now, that is because it is. January 26th is not just a date on a calendar. It marks a narrow spiritual window, a point of alignment where heaven leans close and listens for response. There are moments when divine instruction is released with clarity, and there are moments when heaven waits to see who will answer the call. Today is one of those moments. Jesus is calling your name because what comes next requires your agreement. He is not forcing the door open. He is standing at it, calling, waiting to see if you will move. This is where many people misunderstand divine timing. They assume that if God wills something, it will happen no matter what. But there are moments when heaven's movement is conditional on a human response, and this is one of them. Archangel Michael stands as a messenger and a guardian in this moment, and his warning is clear and sobering. Hesitation right now carries a consequence. This is not meant to frighten you, but to awaken you. Hesitation will cause heaven to go silent for a season you cannot control. Silence does not mean rejection, and it does not mean you are forgotten. It means a window closes, and what was available in this moment becomes delayed until another appointed time. That season of silence is not something you can shorten by effort or force. It is governed by divine order, and once it begins, it must run its course. This is why the warning is being released now, before the decision is made, while the choice is still in your hands. You may be tempted to think, I'll respond later, or I just need more clarity, or I'm not ready yet. But understand this, readiness is often revealed in the act of obedience, not before it. Clarity frequently follows movement, not hesitation. When Jesus calls a name in Scripture, it is rarely at a convenient time. It happens in moments of uncertainty, transition, or quiet resistance. The call itself carries the grace needed to respond. Waiting for perfect conditions is one of the most subtle ways destiny is delayed. A warning today is not about punishment. It is about protection. It is about preventing you from stepping into a season where answers feel distant, prayers feel heavy, and direction feels unclear, not because heaven has withdrawn love, but because an opportunity was passed over. This is your moment because something has been prepared for you that requires your yes today, not tomorrow. There's an assignment, a shift, a release, or a realignment that cannot be activated without your response. Heaven is attentive right now. There is movement, readiness, and alignment on the other side of your obedience. But heaven will not chase reluctance. It honors free will too deeply to override it. When heaven goes silent, it is not out of anger. It is out of order. Silence marks a pause, a waiting period until alignment is restored at another time, in another season, often through greater pressure than what is being asked of you now. You may feel fear rising as you hear this, but fear is not the message. Urgency is. Love is. Invitation is. Jesus does not call names to condemn. He calls names to commission. He calls names to awaken purpose that has been dormant, delayed, or doubted. The reason this feels intense is because it matters. Small moments do not carry warnings like this. Ordinary days do not come with this kind of spiritual gravity. Something rare is passing through your life right now, and how you respond will shape what the next season looks like. This is why you cannot dismiss what you are sensing. This is why distraction suddenly feels louder, and doubt feels more insistent. When a real moment arrives, resistance often masquerades as logic, caution, or delay. But deep down, beneath the noise, you know this call is real. You know this is not just emotional. You know something is being asked of you. Jesus is calling your name because he trusts you with what comes next. Archangel Michael's warning exists because the stakes are real and because heaven is invested in your response. Do not underestimate the power of a single decision made in alignment with divine timing. Do not assume there will always be another moment just like this. Seasons change. Windows open and close. And while God's love is constant, his invitations move according to purpose and time. Right now, heaven is open, attentive, and listening. This is your moment, and what you do with it matters more than you realize. There is a reason this message reached you now, and it goes far beyond chance, algorithms, or timing in the natural sense. Out of countless voices, distractions, and directions your day could have taken, you are here, hearing this, at this exact moment. That alone is a sign. When heaven wants to get your attention, it does not always use thunder or spectacle. Often, it uses precision. It places the right word in front of the right person at the right time, and then it waits. You are not listening to this because you were curious. You are listening because something in your spirit recognized a call before your mind could explain it. Many people spend years asking God for direction, clarity, or confirmation, not realizing that sometimes the answer comes disguised as a simple nudge to listen. This is one of those moments. The reason you are hearing this message now is because you are at a crossroads, whether you have consciously named it or not. Decisions have been weighing on you. Questions have been circling in your thoughts. There has been a sense that something needs to change, shift, or move forward, yet the next step has felt just out of reach. Heaven is not silent right now. Heaven is speaking, and this message is part of that conversation. You may have noticed signs leading up to this moment. Repeated thoughts you cannot shake. Scriptures, words or themes appearing again and again. A restlessness that does not come from dissatisfaction, but from anticipation. Or perhaps a quiet pressure, an inner knowing the time is important right now, even if you cannot fully explain why. These are not random experiences. They are signals of alignment. When a divine moment approaches, the spirit often becomes alert before the intellect catches up. Alertness is what brought you here. This message is not meant to overwhelm you. It is meant to awaken you. Awakening often begins with awareness. Awareness that you are seen. Awareness that you are known. Awareness that heaven is not distant, but engaged with the details of your life. Jesus calling your name is not symbolic language meant to sound poetic. It is relational language. It speaks to intimacy, recognition, and purpose. He calls your name because he knows where you are standing emotionally, spiritually, and mentally. He knows what you have been carrying, what you have delayed, and what you have quietly hoped for. It is also important to understand that when a message like this resonates, it is because agreement is already forming within you. Resistance may still be present, but agreement is there. That agreement is powerful, is the starting point of movement. Heaven often looks for signs of agreement before releasing the next layer of instruction. Agreement does not mean you have everything figured out. It means you are willing to listen, to stay present, and to respond when prompted. Simply being here, still listening, is already a form of response. This is why engagement matters more than people realize. When you interact with a message like this, you are not just clicking buttons on a screen. You are signaling attention, alignment, and openness. That is why, right now, I want you to take a simple but intentional step. If this message resonates with you, if you feel that this word connects with what you have been sensing internally, take a moment to like this video. Let that action be a quiet agreement that says, I am listening. If you have not yet subscribed to this channel, do so now, not out of habit, but as a declaration that you are choosing to stay connected to messages that sharpen your spiritual awareness. And I encourage you to comment as well, even if it is just a short phrase like I receive or I am listening. Words carry power, especially when they are spoken or written in agreement with truth. When you comment, you are not speaking into a void. You are reinforcing alignment, both for yourself and for others who will see your words and realize they are not alone in this moment. If someone comes to this message after you and sees your response, it may be the confirmation they needed to take this seriously. In that way, your engagement becomes part of someone else's awakening. Sharing this message is also an act of purpose. You do not know who in your life may be standing at the edge of hesitation right now, unaware that heaven is calling their name too. When you share, you are not pushing content, you are extending an invitation. You are helping place the right word in front of the right person at the right time, just as it was placed in front of you. Heaven often works through simple acts of obedience that ripple outward in ways we cannot immediately see. Remember, you are not here by accident, and this moment is not insignificant. Heaven is attentive to your response, even in small things. Attention precedes instruction. Engagement precedes clarity. As you choose to lean in rather than scroll past, something begins to shift. The reason you are hearing this now is because you are ready to hear it, even if you are still becoming ready to act on it. That is enough for this moment. Stay present. Stay open. What comes next builds on this foundation, and it will begin to make even more sense as you continue. Hesitation may look harmless on the surface, but in the spiritual realm, it carries weight far greater than most people realize. Archangel Michael's warning is not dramatic language meant to alarm you. It is a precise revelation about how divine timing works. When heaven releases a directive, it is not released casually. It is released with alignment, readiness, and intention. Hesitation interrupts that alignment. It creates a pause where movement was meant to happen, and that pause has consequences that ripple forward. This is why the warning is clear now, before a decision hardens into delay. Many people believe hesitation is the same as patience, but they are not the same. Patience waits while remaining aligned. Hesitation waits while pulling back. Patience trusts the call. Hesitation questions it. And when hesitation takes root, it begins to dull spiritual sensitivity. What was once clear starts to feel uncertain. What once felt urgent begins to feel optional. This is how heaven's voice can fade, not because it stopped speaking, but because the receiver has stepped out of alignment with the moment in which the message was released. Archangel Michael's warning about heaven going silent is not about abandonment. It is about order. Heaven moves in seasons, windows, and appointed times. When a window opens, there is grace attached to it. That grace makes obedience lighter than it would be later. When the window closes, the assignment does not always disappear, but the ease does. The clarity does. The momentum does. That silence people fear is often the result of missing a moment when answers were readily available. Silence is not punishment. It is the absence of fresh instruction until alignment is restored in a future season. You may be wondering how hesitation even begins. Often, it does not look like refusal. It looks like overthinking. It looks like waiting for one more sign. It looks like telling yourself you will respond when you feel braver, more confident, or more prepared. But heaven rarely waits for comfort. Divine calls often arrive before confidence because the confidence is built through obedience, not before it. When you hesitate, you are not protecting yourself. You are postponing growth and risking unnecessary delay. There are people who can trace entire seasons of confusion back to one moment they chose to delay a clear prompting. They did not rebel. They did not reject God. They simply waited too long. And when they finally tried to move, the clarity they once had was gone. They had to walk by faith without the same level of guidance, learning through trial what could have been learned through obedience. This is what Archangel Michael is warning you about. Not to scare you, but to spare you. Heaven going silent does not mean prayers stop being heard. It means new instruction is withheld until the previous instruction is aggressed. Heaven is orderly. It does not stack assignments on top of unfinished obedience. When Jesus calls your name and invites you to move, that invitation becomes the focus. Ignoring it does not cancel it, but it does delay what comes after it. Silence is often heaven waiting for alignment to be restored before releasing the next word. This is why this moment feels heavy and urgent at the same time. You are standing at the edge of decision. Something within you knows that this is not a message to casually consume and forget. It is a warning wrapped in love, a call wrapped in mercy. Heaven is giving you the advantage of awareness. You are being told in advance what many only realize in hindsight. You are being given the opportunity to respond while the window is still open. Understand this clearly. Hesitation does not make you safe. Obedience does. Obedience keeps you within the flow of divine guidance. Obedience keeps heaven's voice clear and present. Obedience does not mean you will never face difficulty, but it means you will not face it without direction. The warning today exists because heaven wants you to stay connected, not drifting through a season of unnecessary silence. If fear is whispering to you right now, recognize it for what it is. Fear often appears when something meaningful is about to shift. Fear is loud when destiny is near. But fear does not get the final say. You do. Your response matters. Your timing matters. What you choose in this moment matters more than you can currently see. So hear this with clarity and calm. You are not being rushed into chaos. You are being invited into alignment. Heaven is not demanding perfection. It is asking for willingness. A willing heart keeps the channel open. A willing response keeps heaven speaking. Do not underestimate the power of responding when your name is called. Type "I am ready" in the comments if this resonates with you. Blessing code 314 is now activated. As you respond in faith, may clarity replace confusion, and may divine guidance remain loud and near in your life. Hold on. What comes next changes everything. As this warning settles into your spirit, hear me clearly from the heart. When you support this mission, you are helping this call reach souls who are still hesitating in the dark. I feel led to tell you this. Your seed becomes light in someone else's night. Scripture declares that when we sow generously, God opens the windows of heaven, and this is Him speaking that promise over your obedience right now. Just as Jesus is calling names today, your giving helps His voice travel farther, breaking silence for others. This is not a donation. It is a prophetic response to what you have just heard. Those who act in moments like this step into uncommon alignment and blessing. I speak increase, peace, and divine acceleration over every giver. Release your seed now through Super Thanks, channel membership, or PayPal. The link is in the description and the QR code is on the screen. Obey this prompting and let heaven move through you. When heaven goes silent, it is one of the most misunderstood experiences in the spiritual journey. Many people assume silence means abandonment, rejection, or divine displeasure, but that assumption often leads to unnecessary fear and confusion. Silence is not the absence of God's presence, it is the absence of new instruction. It is a pause that follows a moment when direction was given, but not acted upon. Understanding this distinction is critical, because misinterpreting silence can cause people to strive, panic, or drift when what is actually required is realignment. Heaven's silence is not emotional. It is not reactive. It is not punitive. It is orderly. When a clear prompting is released and not answered, heaven does not immediately issue a replacement instruction. It waits. Silence becomes the space where alignment is either restored or further delayed. This is why silence can feel so uncomfortable. Human nature craves movement, reassurance, and clarity, but divine order prioritizes obedience over explanation. Silence asks a question without words. Will you respond to what was already given? In seasons of silence, many people mistakenly look for new signs instead of revisiting the last clear direction they receive. They pray harder, seek counsel, consume more messages, and look outward for answers, not realizing that the answer is already behind them, waiting for their response. Silence is often heaven's way of pointing you back, not forward. It invites reflection, humility, and courage. It gently but firmly redirects attention to the moment that required action. What makes silence difficult is that life does not pause just because heaven does. Decisions still need to be made. Responsibilities still exist. Emotions still fluctuate. Without fresh guidance, people may rely more heavily on logic, fear, or past patterns. This is where missteps often happen. Without clarity, people choose what feels safe instead of what is aligned. They settle, compromise, or delay further, extending the very silence they wish would end. Another misunderstood aspect of silence is its duration. Silence is not timed according to human impatience. It is resolved through alignment, not endurance. Some people wait years for clarity to return, not realizing that heaven has been waiting for a single act of obedience. Others confuse busyness with obedience, assuming that activity will substitute for alignment. But movement without direction does not restore clarity. Only response does. Silence can also expose attachments that were previously hidden. When guidance is removed, what you lean on becomes obvious. Fear becomes louder. Control becomes tempting. Comfort becomes convincing. Silence strips away spiritual noise and reveals what truly governs your decisions. In this way, silence is not only a consequence, it is a mirror. It shows you what needs to be surrendered before clarity can return. It is important to say this clearly. Silence does not erase your calling. What was spoken over you is not revoked. Purpose does not disappear because of hesitation, but the path toward it can become longer and more difficult. Silence often means you will have to learn through experience what could have been learned through instruction. You may still reach the destination, but the journey may involve detours that were never meant to be part of your story. This is why heaven warns before silence arrives. Warnings are acts of mercy. They give you the opportunity to choose alignment over delay. They remind you that timing matters, not because God is impatient, but because moments carry specific grace. Grace is not evenly distributed across time. Some grace is attached to specific windows. When those windows close, the grace shifts, and what once felt light can feel heavy. Silence can also affect confidence. Without affirmation, people begin to doubt what they once knew. They question whether they heard correctly. They second-guess past confirmations. Over time, this uncertainty can erode boldness. That is why hesitation is so dangerous. It does not just delay action, it weakens conviction. What once felt clear becomes cloudy, not because truth changed, but because distance was created. However, silence is not without purpose. It can refine discernment, deepen humility, and strengthen resolve. For those who eventually realign, silence often becomes a teacher. It shows the value of obedience. It sharpens sensitivity. It instills reverence for divine timing. Those who emerge from silence with understanding often carry a deeper respect for moments like the one you are standing in now. This is why today matters. Awareness gives you an advantage. You are not being left to figure this out through loss or regret. You are being told in advance what silence looks like, how it happens, and how it can be avoided. Heaven is still speaking now. The channel is still open. The invitation still stands. Do not underestimate how quickly silence can arrive once a window closes. Do not assume it will feel dramatic or obvious. Often, it arrives quietly, disguised as uncertainty, delay, or distraction. And by the time it is recognized, the moment has already passed. That is why responsiveness is so powerful. It keeps you within the flow of guidance, where even challenges are navigated with clarity. Silence is not something to fear, but it is something to respect. It is a signal that alignment matters more than comfort, and obedience matters more than explanation. Understanding this now places responsibility back into your hands. You are not powerless. You are positioned. What you choose to do with this understanding will shape what the next season sounds like. When Jesus calls your name, something far deeper than attention is being activated. In Scripture, name calling is never casual. It is never for familiarity alone. When God calls a name, He is awakening identity, summoning purpose, and initiating movement. Names carry authority in the spiritual realm because they represent assignment. This is why this moment feels personal. It is personal. Jesus is not calling a crowd right now. He is calling you. And when your name is spoken in the unseen, heaven responds with readiness. Throughout biblical history, the calling of a name marked a turning point. It signaled transition from one season to another. It separated individuals from the ordinary flow of life and positioned them within divine intention. When Jesus calls your name, He is not merely asking for your attention. He is activating what hath been placed inside you but not yet fully released. There is dormant potential within you that responds to His voice even before your mind understands what is happening. That is why this call resonates at such a deep level. Identity is not something you create. It is something you discover through alignment. Many people struggle because they attempt to define themselves through circumstance, past mistakes, or current limitations. But when Jesus calls your name, He calls it according to heaven's definition, not your own. He speaks to who you are becoming, not just who you have been. This is why the call can feel unsettling. It challenges the version of yourself you have grown comfortable with and invites you into a fuller expression of purpose. His call also activates separation, not isolation but distinction. When your name is called, certain attachments begin to loosen. Old fears lose their authority. Previous excuses feel less convincing. Comfort zones begin to feel restrictive instead of safe. This is not accidental. Purpose requires clarity, and clarity often requires separation from distractions that dilute focus. When Jesus calls your name, he begins to draw a line between what aligns with your assignment and what no longer serves it. There is also a release of spiritual authority that accompanies this call. Authority is not about control. It is about alignment. When you respond to your name being called, you step into agreement with heaven's order. That agreement gives weight to your decisions, clarity to your prayers, and direction to your steps. This is why hesitation is so costly. Hesitation delays authority. Obedience activates it. Authority flows most freely when response is immediate. Many people assume they need to feel qualified before responding to a divine call. But qualification comes through calling, not before it. When Jesus calls your name, he is already aware of your weaknesses, doubts, and limitations. None of these disqualify you. In fact, they often become the very areas through which grace is revealed. The call itself carries provision. The moment you respond, heaven begins to supply what obedience requires. This is also where spiritual awakening deepens. Awakening is not just awareness of God's presence. It is awareness of your role. When your name is called, something within you awakens to responsibility. You realize that your life is not random, and your choices are not insignificant. Purpose becomes less abstract and more immediate. You begin to sense that what you do matters beyond your personal experience. That awareness changes how you see time, decisions, and priorities. Responding to the call of your name also restores alignment between your inner world and heaven's intention. Many people live with internal conflict because they sense they are meant for more, yet remain rooted in what is familiar. When Jesus calls your name, he addresses that tension. He invites you to resolve it through response. Peace does not come from staying where you are, it comes from moving where you are called. It is important to understand that responding does not mean everything becomes clear instantly. Often, clarity unfolds step by step. But the first step always begins with acknowledgement. Recognition of the call opens a door to further instruction. Silence is replaced with guidance. Confusion gives way to direction. Momentum begins to build. This is the power of response. It turns potential into movement. This call also reshapes how heaven recognizes you. Scripture reveals that heaven responds to obedience with attention. When you respond, your prayers carry new weight. Your discernment sharpens. Opportunities align in unexpected ways. This is not coincidence. It is alignment in motion. Heaven honors those who honor its timing. Do not underestimate what is being activated right now. The call to your name is a moment of commissioning. It is an invitation to step into greater responsibility, greater clarity, and greater impact. It is not about perfection. It is about willingness. Willingness keeps the channel open. Willingness allows heaven to continue speaking. Right now, something has been stirred within you for a reason. Identity is being awakened. Purpose is being activated. Authority is being restored. This is what happens when Jesus calls your name. And this is why your response in this moment matters more than you can yet see. January 26th carries a weight that goes beyond ordinary time. In the spiritual realm, not all days are equal. Some moments are charged with opportunity, alignment, and movement, while others are meant for preparation or reflection. This date stands as a narrow window, what Scripture often describes as a Kairos moment, a divinely appointed time where heaven's agenda intersects with human decision. Kairos moments do not linger. They open with precision and close without announcement. That is why this moment feels urgent without being chaotic. Urgency in the spirit is calm, clear, and focused. It presses without panicking. Chronos time measures hours, days, and years. Kairos time measures readiness and response. You may have been in Chronos time for a while, waiting, enduring, learning, or growing quietly. But January 26 marks a shift from waiting to responding. Heaven is not asking you to reflect on what might happen someday. It is drawing your attention to what is available now. When a Kairos window opens, it carries grace that is specific to that moment. That grace makes obedience possible in ways that may not be available later. This is why people sometimes look back on certain dates and realize everything changed from that point forward. At the time, the day may not have seemed dramatic. Life may have looked ordinary on the surface. But inwardly, a decision was made, a response was given, where a prompting was ignored. Kairos moments often pass quietly, but their impact echoes loudly across seasons. January 26th is such a moment. What you choose to do with what you are hearing today will shape how the next season unfolds. Heaven often marks specific dates not because of superstition, but because alignment reaches completion. Things that have been developing behind the scenes come into position. People are ready, circumstances are prepared, and spiritual authority is poised to move. When all these elements align, a window opens. That window does not stay open indefinitely, because alignment itself is dynamic. If movement does not happen, the alignment shifts, and the opportunity moves with it. This date matters because it represents readiness, not perfection. You may feel unprepared in certain areas, but readiness in the spirit is about willingness, not completeness. Heaven does not wait for you to have all the answers. It waits for you to be responsive. January 26th is a response point. It is a moment where heaven listens for agreement. Agreement activates movement. Silence follows delay. Another reason this date is significant is because it arrives after a season of testing. Many who are hearing this have endured pressure, uncertainty, or prolonged waiting. That season was not wasted. It refined discernment and strengthened endurance. But refinement alone is not the goal. Movement is. This date signals a transition from preparation to participation. You are not being asked to train indefinitely. You are being invited to step forward. Kairos windows also bring heightened sensitivity. You may notice emotion surfacing, clarity increasing, or resistance intensifying. These are not signs of instability. They are indicators of proximity. When something meaningful is near, the soul responds. Distractions become louder because they are losing effectiveness. Up becomes more insistent because it senses its time is short. January 26th exposes what is aligned and what is resisting alignment. It is also important to understand that Kairos moments often come with simplicity. The instruction is rarely complex. It may be a decision, a commitment, a release, or an act of obedience that seems small on the surface. But small responses in Kairos time carry disproportionate impact. What feels minor now can unlock major movement later. Heaven values timing as much as action. A small step taken at the right time can move more than a great effort taken too late. This date also represents divine attention. Heaven is attentive right now. That does not mean heaven is not always aware, but it does mean there is focused engagement. When heaven is attentive, guidance is clear, doors are responsive, and resistance is easier to discern. This attentiveness does not last forever. It is meant to be met with response. When response happens, attentiveness deepens. When response is delayed, attentiveness shifts elsewhere. You may be tempted to treat this day like any other, to tell yourself that nothing will really change. But that assumption ignores how spiritual transitions actually work. Change often begins invisibly. The outward evidence may come later, but the inward decision happens first. January 26th is about that inward decision. It is about alignment of will. Once alignment is established, manifestation follows in its proper time. Do not look for dramatic signs to validate this moment. The significance of this date is already being confirmed by the awareness you feel right now. That awareness is the signal. Heaven speaks first to the spirit, then to circumstances. If you wait for circumstances to change before responding, you will miss the order of movement. Response comes first. Change follows. This is why this window matters. It is not about pressure. It is about privilege. You are being invited to move in sync with heaven's timing. Many never recognize their Kairos moments until they have passed. You are being made aware while the window is still open. Awareness is a gift. January 26 is a hinge point. What follows will depend on what you do with what you have been given today. Heaven has leaned close. The call hath been released. The window is open. This moment will not announce its closing, but it will respond to your decision. Just before a breakthrough, distraction rarely announces itself as an enemy. It arrives subtly, wrapped in logic, comfort, and reasonable delay. This is one of the most effective strategies used against moments of destiny. When a real shift is near, the enemy does not always try to stop you with fear alone. Instead, it offers alternatives that feel safe, responsible, or even wise. These alternatives are not always wrong in themselves, but they are wrong for the moment. Their purpose is not to destroy the call, but to delay it until the window closes. Distraction intensifies when alignment is close. You may notice your attention being pulled in multiple directions at once. Tasks that once felt manageable suddenly feel urgent. Conversations, concerns, or obligations rise to the surface, demanding immediate focus. None of these things are necessarily evil or unimportant, but they become strategic when they pull you away from responding to what truly matters right now. The enemy understands timing. It knows that stopping you is not always necessary if delaying you will produce the same result. Doubt often accompanies distraction. It begins quietly, questioning whether you really heard correctly, whether this moment is truly significant, or whether you can afford to respond right now. Doubt disguises itself as discernment, but discernment brings clarity, not confusion. When questions multiply without answers and clarity begins to erode, it is often a sign that distraction is at work. The enemy's goal is not to convince you that the call is false, but to convince you that it can wait. One of the most dangerous forms of distraction is comfort. Comfort whispers that staying where you are is safer than stepping forward. It tells you that nothing bad will happen if you delay, that you can respond later when things feel more stable or predictable. But comfort is not peace. Peace comes from alignment. Comfort comes from familiarity. The enemy often uses comfort to keep people bound to what feels manageable, even when heaven is calling them higher. Another tactic is false wisdom. This sounds like careful planning, excessive caution, or the need for complete certainty before moving. While wisdom is valuable, false wisdom paralyzes. It demands guarantees before obedience, forgetting that faith operates without full visibility. Heaven rarely reveals the entire path at once. It reveals the next step. When you demand more than what is given, you place conditions on obedience. That is not wisdom, it is control disguised as prudence. You may also notice an increase in emotional noise. Old fears resurface. Past failures replay in your mind. Thoughts like, what if I get it wrong? Or what if this costs me too much? Grow louder. These thoughts are not new. They are recycled. They appear now because the moment matters. If the call were insignificant, there would be no resistance. Opposition is often confirmation that you are moving in the right direction. Distraction also works through delay disguised as preparation. You may feel tempted to research more, wait for more confirmation, or seek more opinions. While counsel can be helpful, there is a point where seeking more input becomes avoidance. When heaven has already spoken clearly, seeking endless confirmation becomes a way to postpone responsibility. The enemy knows that delayed obedience often becomes disobedience by default. Another subtle strategy is minimizing the moment. You may tell yourself that responding now is not that important, that it won't really change much. This lie robs moments of their power. Small decisions made in divine timing carry enormous weight. Minimization dulls urgency and makes destiny feel optional. It convinces you that missing this moment will have no real consequence, even though deep down you sense otherwise. Distraction thrives in isolation. When you keep what you are sensing to yourself, doubts grow unchecked. This is why clarity often strengthens when you acknowledge what you are hearing. Silence around a call can feed uncertainty. The enemy prefers private hesitation over open response. Once a response is made, even internally, distraction loses ground. It is important to recognize that distraction is not always dramatic. It does not always feel like temptation. Sometimes it feels like responsibility. Sometimes it feels like fatigue. Sometimes it feels like waiting for the right mood. But timing and the spirit is not governed by mood. It is governed by obedience. Waiting to feel ready often means waiting too long. You are not weak for feeling this resistance. Resistance is expected in moments of transition. What matters is how you respond to it. Awareness is your advantage. You are not being caught off guard. You are being shown how distraction operates so you can see it for what it is. Once recognized, distraction loses much of its power. This moment is not asking you to fight harder. It is asking you to see clearly. Clarity cuts through distraction. When you recognize what is happening, you regain authority over your attention. You can choose focus over fear, alignment over comfort, response over delay. Remember this: if what you are facing could wait without consequence, there would be no urgency. The pressure you feel is not meant to crush you. It is meant to move you. Distraction wants you comfortable. Heaven wants you aligned. One leads to stagnation. The other leads to life. Right now, the call is still clear. The window is still open. Distraction has not won. But it is present, and it is active. What you do next will determine whether this moment becomes a turning point or a missed opportunity. The awareness you now have is not accidental. It is an invitation to choose focus, courage, and response while you still can. When you say yes, something shifts immediately, even if nothing changes outwardly at first. Obedience activates movement in realms you cannot see, and that movement begins to rearrange what once felt stuck. Heaven does not wait to see if you feel confident before responding. It responds to alignment. The moment you choose agreement over hesitation, resistance begins to lose its grip, and momentum quietly returns. This is the power released when you say yes. Saying yes does not mean you suddenly have every detail mapped out. It means you step into cooperation with divine timing. That cooperation invites acceleration. What once required effort begins to flow with less resistance. Conversations align. Opportunities surface. Insight sharpens. This is not coincidence. It is the natural result of alignment restoring movement. When heaven sees willingness, it meets it with provision. Angelic activity responds to obedience. Scripture consistently reveals that angels are sent to assist those who walk in alignment with God's will. When you say yes, assistance is released. You may not see it, but you will feel its effects. Confusion lifts. Direction clarifies. Strength rises where exhaustion once lived. This is because obedience restores connection to supply. You were never meant to carry divine assignments alone. Momentum is one of the first things restored after obedience. Momentum does not always feel dramatic. Sometimes it feels like relief. Sometimes it feels like renewed focus. Sometimes it feels like courage returning after a long absence. Momentum reminds you that you are not stalled. You were waiting. Once movement begins again, even small steps feel purposeful. Progress replaces pressure. Saying yes also restores peace, not the peace of comfort, but the peace of alignment. This peace exists even when circumstances remain challenging. It is the inner assurance that you are where you are supposed to be, doing what you are meant to do. This peace guards your mind against doubt and anchors you during transition. It does not remove challenges, but it removes confusion about whether you should face them. Another powerful release that follows obedience is clarity in decision-making. When you say yes to what heaven is asking now, other decisions begin to fall into place. What once felt complicated becomes simpler. Priorities reorder themselves. Distractions lose their pull. This is because obedience sharpens discernment. Once you align with the primary instruction, secondary questions often answer themselves. There is also a release of spiritual authority that accompanies obedience. Authority grows when response is immediate. When you say yes, you step into agreement with heaven's order, and that agreement carries weight. Your prayers become more focused. Your discernment becomes more confident. Your voice carries greater conviction. Authority is not something you demand. It is something you receive through alignment. Saying yes also impacts those connected to you. Obedience is never isolated. It ripples outward. People you may never meet benefit from decisions you make in private. Paths are cleared. Opportunities are unlocked. Light reaches places it could not reach before. This is why hesitation has broader consequences than most realize. And this is why obedience carries generational impact. You may still feel fear when you say yes. Fear does not disappear instantly, but fear loses control. It becomes background noise instead of a driving force. Courage does not mean fear is absent. It means fear no longer decides. When you say yes, courage rises to meet you. Strength you did not know you had becomes accessible. Grace meets you in motion. This moment is not about dramatic declarations. It is about internal alignment. A quiet yes carries just as much power as a public one. Heaven hears it. Heaven responds to it. And heaven builds on it. What matters is sincerity, not volume. Willingness, not performance. This is why this part of the message matters so deeply. You are not being warned without being empowered. The same heaven that cautioned you about hesitation is ready to respond to obedience. The door that could close through delay opens wider through response. Silence is replaced with guidance. Stillness gives way to movement. Type SAYYS in the comments if this resonates with you. Lesson code 842 is now activated. As you align with this moment, may momentum return, clarity increase, and peace guard every step you take. You'll be glad you stayed for what's about to be revealed. As obedience begins to unlock momentum, hear this as a living word for you. When you give into this mission, you are helping heaven answer the yes of others. I am speaking to you directly now. Your seed becomes oil that keeps the light burning for souls still searching. God says in His word that those who water others will themselves be refreshed, and this is that moment in action. Just as you are choosing alignment, your giving aligns this channel to reach farther, deeper, and stronger. This is not about support. It is about obedience meeting opportunity. I release blessing, increase, and divine protection over every giver who responds right now. Act on this prompting through super thanks, channel membership, or PayPal. The link is in the description and the QR code is on the screen. Move now, and let your obedience speak in heaven. This moment has never been just about you alone. From the beginning, what heaven is doing right now has been larger than a single life, a single decision, or a single outcome. Your obedience is a gateway, not a destination. When Jesus calls your name and you respond, the impact moves outward, touching lives you may never see and stories you may never hear. Heaven works through connection, and your yes becomes a bridge for others to cross. Many people underestimate how interconnected purpose truly is. No calling exists in isolation. Every assignment carries influence beyond personal fulfillment. When you step into alignment, you shift the environment around you. Conversations change. Atmosphere shift. Opportunities open not just for you, but for those connected to you. Someone else's clarity may be waiting on your courage. Someone else's breakthrough may be tied to your obedience. This is why hesitation carries such weight. Delay does not only slow personal progress, it creates a pause in the flow meant to reach others. Heaven sees the full picture, even when you cannot. It sees the people positioned downstream from your decision. It sees the prayers that will be answered through your response. When you say yes, you are not just stepping forward for yourself. You are stepping forward on behalf of others who need what is carried inside you. Think about the times someone else's obedience impacted your life. A word spoken at the right moment. A message shared when you needed it most. A decision someone made that created an opportunity for you. These moments often seem small to the one who acted, but monumental to the one who received. This is how obedience works. Its value is often revealed through its effect on others, not through immediate reward. Heaven invests in people who understand this principle. Those who recognize that their lives are conduits, not containers, carry responsibility with humility. You are not being asked to carry the weight of outcomes, only the responsibility of response. Outcomes belong to heaven. Response belongs to you. When you respond, heaven handles the rest. This is also why sharing matters so much in moments like this. When you share a message aligned with divine timing, you become part of heaven's distribution system. You help place a word in front of someone at the exact moment they need it. You may never know whose hesitation was interrupted because you chose to act. You may never see the ripple, but heaven sees it clearly. Right now, I want to invite you to take that step seriously. If this message has spoken to you, do not keep it to yourself. Share it with someone you feel led to. Let that act be more than routine. Let it be intentional. You are not sharing content, you are extending an invitation. You are participating in something bigger than personal insight. I also encourage you to engage again, not out of habit but out of purpose. If you have already liked this video, let that like stand as continued agreement. If you have not subscribed, this is a moment to do so with intention, choosing to stay connected to messages that sharpen discernment and call forth obedience. And if you feel prompted, comment again, even briefly. Your words may be the confirmation someone else is waiting to see. There is a reason heaven often uses community to move people forward. When others see response, courage multiplies. When others see obedience, hesitation weakens. Your visible agreement can strengthen someone else's resolve. This is how momentum builds across lives, not just within them. Do not underestimate how strategic this moment is. The enemy understands the power of collective movement. That is why distraction and isolation are so heavily targeted. But when people respond together, alignment strengthens. When voices agree, clarity amplifies. When obedience spreads, resistance loses ground. This is also why you may feel a growing sense that what you are hearing needs to be shared. That prompting is not pressure, it is participation. Heaven is inviting you to be part of the movement, not just a recipient of the message. Saying yes includes action, and sometimes that action is as simple as making sure someone else hears the call in time. Your obedience today could shorten someone else's season of silence. It could interrupt someone else's delay. It could awaken someone else's courage. That is not an exaggeration. That is how purpose works. One response opens many doors. As you consider this, remember that heaven honors those who honor timing. This moment is still active. The window is still open. But moments like this are meant to be acted on, not just acknowledged. What you do with what you have received matters. Stay present with this. Let it settle. Let it move you. There is more unfolding, and what comes next builds directly on what you choose to do now. Something is about to be revealed that will bring everything you have heard into even sharper focus. Hold that awareness close. What comes next will matter more than you expect. There are clear signs that appear when someone is standing at a threshold moment, even if they cannot fully articulate what that threshold is. These signs are not always external. More often, they are internal shifts that signal transition before change becomes visible. If you have been sensing an unusual tension between fear and anticipation, that is not random. It is one of the most common indicators that you are standing at the edge of something significant. One of the first signs is emotional pressure without a clear source. You may feel stirred, unsettled, or unusually reflective, even when nothing specific has changed in your circumstances. This pressure is not anxiety in the ordinary sense. It is the awareness that something is about to move. Your spirit recognizes transition before your mind catches up. That recognition can feel heavy because it carries responsibility. It is the weight of decision, not the weight of danger. Another sign is sudden clarity paired with hesitation. You may find that certain things you once questioned now feel obvious, while at the same time, acting on that clarity feels intimidating. This combination is important. When clarity increases, resistance often follows. If clarity came without resistance, growth would be automatic. Resistance appears because a threshold requires choice. What you are sensing now is the space between knowing and doing. You may also notice repeated confirmations appearing in different forms. Words, themes, conversations, or ideas may surface again and again, each reinforcing the same message. These confirmations are not meant to overwhelm you. They are meant to strengthen conviction. Heaven often repeats what matters, not because it doubts your ability to hear, but because repetition builds confidence. When the same truth arrives from multiple directions, it signals proximity to a decision point. Another indicator is a growing dissatisfaction with what once felt acceptable. This does not mean you are ungrateful. It means you are becoming aware that where you are is no longer aligned with where you are meant to go. Comfort may begin to feel restrictive. Routine may feel draining instead of stabilizing. This discomfort is not meant to push you into impulsive action, but to loosen your attachment to staying the same. You may also experience an increase in internal dialogue. Questions surface more frequently. Thoughts loop. You replay scenarios and imagine outcomes. This mental activity is not always a sign of confusion. It can be a sign of transition. When a threshold approaches, the mind attempts to prepare by analyzing possibilities. The key is not to let analysis replace obedience. Thinking is helpful up to the point where it supports action. Beyond that point, it becomes a delay mechanism. Heightened sensitivity is another sign. You may feel more aware of tone, atmosphere, or spiritual undercurrents. Things that once went unnoticed now stand out. This sensitivity is part of preparation. It sharpens discernment. But it can also feel overwhelming if you try to process everything at once. Threshold moments require focus, not overload. Discernment works best when directed toward the primary call, not every surrounding detail. You may also notice a sense of urgency that does not feel frantic. This urgency is calm but insistent. It does not shout, but it does not leave. It gently presses you to pay attention. This is the kind of urgency that accompanies divine timing. It does not demand haste. It invites response. When you ignore it, it does not disappear. It simply waits, growing heavier the longer it is resisted. Another sign is the resurfacing of old fears or past failures. These memories are not returning to define you. They are returning to be confronted. Threshold moments often bring unresolved fears into view, not to stop you, but to expose what no longer has authority. If these thoughts are surfacing now, it is because they are losing power. What resists exposure is what still controls. What surfaces is ready to be released. You may also feel a strange mixture of vulnerability and strength. Vulnerability because you know change requires risk. Strength because something within you knows you are capable of more than you have shown so far. This tension is not a weakness. It is the birthplace of courage. Courage does not eliminate vulnerability. It moves forward with it. All of these signs point to one truth. You are standing at a threshold. Thresholds are moments of crossing. They are not places to camp. They require movement. Staying too long at a threshold creates frustration because you were not meant to live in transition. You were meant to pass through it. Recognizing these signs is not meant to pressure you. It is meant to ground you in awareness. Awareness gives you agency. You are not confused because something is wrong. You are aware because something is right and unfolding. The discomfort you feel is not misalignment. It is transition. This is why discernment matters now. Not every thought needs to be entertained. Not every fear needs to be answered. The most important question is simple. Will you move when the moment calls for it? Thresholds do not require perfection. They require decision. What you are sensing right now is not imagination. It is positioning. You are closer than you think. And what remains is not preparation, but response. Obedience in moments like this often looks far simpler than people expect. It is not about dramatic gestures, public declarations, or instant transformation. It is about alignment of the heart first, followed by intentional movement. Heaven rarely asks for everything at once. It asks for the next step. What obedience looks like right now is not overwhelming action, but honest response. It begins internally, where decisions are formed before they are ever seen. The first expression of obedience is acknowledgement. Acknowledging that you have heard the call. Acknowledging that this moment matters. Acknowledging that delay carries consequences. This acknowledgement does not need to be spoken aloud to others, but it must be real within you. When you stop minimizing what you are sensing and begin to take it seriously, alignment begins to form. Many people delay not because they refuse to obey, but because they refuse to acknowledge the weight of the moment. Obedience also looks like surrendering the need to fully understand. You may want clarity about outcomes, timing, or impact, But obedience asks you to trust the one who sees what you cannot. Trust does not mean blind action. It means choosing alignment over control. Control demands guarantees. Obedience responds to invitation. The difference between the two determines whether movement happens now or later. Another expression of obedience is releasing internal resistance. Resistance often shows up as justification for delay. Thoughts like "I'll do it later," "I need more time," or "I'm not ready yet" may sound reasonable, but they often mask fear of change. Obedience confronts these thoughts gently but firmly. It asks whether they are rooted in wisdom or in comfort. Wisdom moves with timing. Comfort resists disruption. Obedience also looks like simplicity. Heaven is not asking you to solve every problem at once. It is asking you to take the step that has already been made clear. That step may involve a decision, a commitment, a conversation, or a shift in focus. It may be small in appearance, but it is significant in timing. Obedience honors timing more than scale. It is important to understand that obedience is not driven by emotion. You may not feel inspired every moment. You may not feel confident or strong. Obedience is not a feeling. It is a choice. Feelings often follow obedience, not the other way around. When you wait to feel ready, you hand authority over to emotions that fluctuate. When you choose obedience, you anchor yourself in purpose that remains steady. Another aspect of obedience right now is alignment of intention. Ask yourself honestly, am I willing to move if clarity comes through action instead of explanation? Am I willing to trust direction that unfolds step by step? Obedience answers yes to these questions before evidence appears. It is a posture of openness rather than certainty. Obedience also requires letting go of comparison. Looking at others can distort perception. You may feel behind, ahead, or out of place when comparing your journey to someone else's. But obedience is personal. Heaven speaks to individuals according to their assignment. What obedience looks like for you may not look like obedience for someone else. Alignment is measured by response, not by resemblance. Right now, obedience may also mean choosing stillness over noise. Too many voices can dilute clarity. Obedience sometimes requires you to quiet external input and focus on what has already been spoken. When heaven has given a clear prompt, adding more information can create confusion. Stillness allows conviction to strengthen. Another important element is courage. Obedience often involves stepping into uncertainty. Courage is not the absence of fear, it is movement in spite of it. Fear loses influence when action is taken. Courage grows through use. Each obedient step strengthens the next one. Waiting for fear to disappear before moving ensures you never move at all. Obedience also includes trust in timing. You may feel pressure to rush or to stall. Neither extreme reflects alignment. Obedience moves when prompted and rests when instructed. Right now, the instruction is to respond, not to overextend. Response does not mean doing everything immediately. It means agreeing now and moving as directed. Heaven watches response closely, not to judge but to engage. When response happens, guidance continues. When response is withheld, silence follows. Obedience keeps the conversation open. It keeps direction flowing. It keeps clarity accessible. What obedience looks like right now is honest, simple, and intentional. It does not require perfection. It requires willingness. Willingness invites grace. Grace supplies strength. Strength sustains movement. This is not about proving faith. It is about practicing it. Faith expressed through obedience activates what faith alone cannot. Right now, heaven is attentive. The call has been made. The next move is not complicated, but it is critical. What you choose to do with what you have heard will determine whether this moment becomes a turning point or a memory. Obedience is the bridge between calling and fulfillment, and that bridge is built one step at a time, beginning now. This is the moment where everything comes together, not in pressure, but in clarity. What you have been hearing is not meant to leave you anxious or uncertain. It is meant to leave you assured, strengthened, and anchored in truth. Jesus calling your name is not about urgency without hope. It is about invitation with purpose. You are not standing at the edge of something fragile. You are standing at the threshold of alignment, and alignment always leads to peace when embraced. You have been reminded that timing matters, not because heaven is harsh, but because heaven is intentional. You have seen how hesitation creates silence, how distraction delays destiny, and how obedience restores momentum. Now, it is important to understand this final truth. You are not late. You are called. If you are hearing this now, it means grace is still active. It means the door is still open. It means heaven is still listening. This message was never meant to overwhelm you with responsibility. It was meant to awaken you to opportunity. Heaven does not call names to burden people. It calls names to release them into purpose. Purpose does not enslave. It frees. It frees you from cycles of doubt, delay, and confusion. It anchors you in identity rather than fear. When you respond, you do not lose yourself. You become who you were meant to be. Assurance is being released over you right now. Assurance that you are seen. Assurance that you are capable. Assurance that you are not walking this path alone. Whatever obedience requires from you next, heaven is already prepared to meet you there. Provision follows response. Strength follows alignment. Peace follows trust. If you have felt weighed down by past delays, let that weight lift now. Regret has no authority here. Awareness is a gift, not a condemnation. You are not being judged for what you did not do before. You are being invited into what you can do now. This moment is not about looking back. It is about stepping forward with clarity. Let hope rise where fear once whispered. Hope is not wishful thinking. It is confidence in divine order. Hope reminds you that obedience always leads somewhere good, even if the path is unfamiliar. Faith does not require certainty. It requires trust. And trust grows when you choose alignment over hesitation. As you move forward, carry this with you. Heaven responds to sincerity, not perfection. You do not need to have every answer. You need to have a willing heart. That willingness keeps the channel open. It keeps guidance flowing. It keeps silence from settling in. You are not alone in this moment. Many are responding right now, choosing alignment, choosing courage, choosing to say yes. There is strength in knowing you are part of something larger. There is comfort in knowing that obedience connects you to a greater story. Take a breath. Let the urgency settle into resolve. Let fear give way to peace. Let clarity replace confusion. This is not the end of the message. It is the beginning of movement. What happens next will unfold step by step, guided, sustained, and purposeful. Type "I walk in alignment" in the comments if this resonates with you. Blessing code 909 is now activated. May peace guard your heart, may clarity guide your steps, and may heaven's voice remain clear and near in every season ahead. As this message comes to rest in your spirit, hear this final call clearly. When you give here, you become a vessel through which God's voice reaches those still waiting for direction. I am speaking this as an invitation, not from man, but from alignment. your seed becomes fire that keeps this altar burning. God declares that those who sow into good ground will reap in due season, and this is that living promise in action. Just as you have chosen obedience today, your giving allows this word to cross borders, timelines, and hearts. This is a prophetic act, not a passive one. I speak blessing, covering, and divine increase over every person who responds. Release your seed now through Super Thanks, channel membership, or PayPal. The link is in the description and the QR code is on the screen. Act now, and let your obedience echo in heaven.